Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Again, this is Steve Reed with Q Markets, and appreciate everybody jumping on today and joining our monthly Innovation Best Practice webinar. Since this is the first one in 2020, we wanted to do something a little different. Normally, this is just a monthly 30 to 45-minute webinar. This time, we're doing a three-part series, and really over the next 3 weeks, it's going to go end to end with getting things going with your innovation aspirations at your program. So as I know a lot of you who have jumped on, I think this is a really timely refresher, both for those of you who have been customers or had a software for years and years, but also for new people who are asking themselves right now, okay, how am I going to do this, right? How am I going to I've been given a budget. I've been given a role. How am I going to build this program out and scale it to fulfill the objectives of our company? So with that, we're very fortunate to have Jimmy Cordy with JM Capital joining us. Jimmy and I have worked together over the last few years on several innovation events, and he brings 20 plus years of experience with working some outstanding world-class organizations. So after I do my brief overview, we'll go ahead and hand it off to Jimmy for the duration of this. One housekeeping item is you have questions, we want them. If you look at the webinar, you'll see the ability to have a chat function. And so Elliot is also joining from Q Markets, and he's going to be monitoring and scanning all the Q&A. So please feel free to type in questions. We will take breaks periodically. So again, kicking this off, Q Markets has been recognized as the global leader in innovation management software space. We work with companies like Ford, Cigna, Bridgestone, and really hundreds more fulfill their goals, right, by doing two major things, right? First of all is scaling your innovation programs, taking it from hundreds of ideas to literally thousands with some of our clients. And just as important is the ability to quickly move, identify great ideas, filter them out, and make sure that the right people are empowered to make the right decisions. And so we have a tremendous 10 plus year history of working with these organizations and have some great examples to share. But today it's really focused on how to enable your people, how to build your processes. The software, as I mentioned, enables all these things, right? Whether it's asking a question, having discussion around those questions, evaluating them, ultimately implementing and measuring the ROI. Our software is built to do all those things. The one thing I do want to point out that I think is really critical is today we're going to talk about this middle part here, right? How do we build this? How do we ideate? Q Markets, the true value of our product is this big picture look. And if you look at starting on the left-hand side, it starts with years in advance, right? Evaluating what are the trends that our organization is looking at? What are insights we can gain from our customers? Who are the various audiences? I read a great article this morning on Harvard Business Review. I'd recommend you look at it. Talks about innovation, and it mentions something that's often a miss, which is asking the right people for feedback, right? And so Q Markets, as you look at this, has a product and an offering that addresses all those, right? Whether it's trends, whether it's empathizing with the customer experience, whether it's opening it up to your supply chain, opening it up to academia, opening it up to partners that you work with, scouting, right, for technology. Sometimes the best idea is another company, right, or a new technology. Ultimately, ideation, process improvement, and then building out those projects. And so where Q Market stands alone is we do all this, right? We enable you as a company to do all these things. And so when I speak with new clients, the first thing I tell them is the software is half the battle. Congratulations, here's your license. We're going to train you on how to use it. But you also need to make sure that those first two things that you see on this slide here are done. And that's what's our strategy? What's our long-term, short-term goals? How do we define success? And then what processes are we using? An easy way to think of it are what I call the three Ps, which is people, process, and platform. And so certainly we enable that third P, and Jimmy here today is going to talk about these first two, right? Your people, your processes, and how you can maximize the value of what you're doing. So again, Jimmy, I'll hand off to you, and we'll be monitoring for questions and add those periodically. Thanks.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve. I appreciate the intro and the opportunity to be a part of this. Good morning or afternoon or evening, everyone, depending on where you might be calling from, and Happy New Year to everybody. My name is Jimmy Cordy. I'm the Vice President of Consulting Services at JM2 Capital. I'm talking with you from our home office here in Oklahoma City in Oklahoma. Thank you for joining part one of our three-part innovation series, where we're focusing on some best practices for getting started on your company's innovation journey. Over the next 3 weeks, we will discuss what we believe are the key learnings and suggestions for successfully starting and generating the necessary momentum to sustain healthy innovation practices in your company. So welcome to part one, starting your innovation journey. You know, I was looking at the attendee list for our session today, and it's wonderful to see such a variety of industries represented. You collectively represent a number of different titles and positions in your organizations as well. So it's nice to have a good mix. I guess that some of you are here today simply out of curiosity. Maybe some are here because your role is directly related to your company's innovation practice. Some are here as a proxy for someone else, perhaps, but even more importantly, some of you might be here because of a particular burning platform where you simply have got to start making some substantive progress in your innovation efforts, and you're likely at different places in your innovation journey. Perhaps at the beginning for some, in the middle of a period of maybe frustrating inertia for others, or you're ready for a complete restart. Regardless of where you are and what your role is, we hope there is some practical advice and useful learnings you can put into practice quickly and inform your next steps. Going to the next slide here. This slide represents kind of our map of our three-part series, sort of a where are we picture. In part one today, we'll discuss what we believe are the primary considerations for starting your innovation journey. Whether your organization is a small 20-person family-owned business, a mid-sized private company with years of local or regional service history, or maybe you're part of a large multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, there should be some nuggets you can glean from today about what should be in place to begin the process, again, regardless of the size of your organization. Part two, next week, we'll focus on building a culture of innovation, which I believe is so very critical to the success of any transformative initiative. As Peter Drucker so famously said, you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. Well, he never said strategy wasn't critical, and I'd argue that it all starts with strategy. But if your culture doesn't support your strategy in a meaningful and a tangible way, then your strategy has little chance of true transformative success. With innovation, we'll talk about how it indeed starts with your strategy, but true innovation will live and breathe and be sustained if and when your organization's culture actually champions innovative thought, innovative behavior, and innovative measurements. Part three, lastly, in our third section, we'll discuss rewards and recognition in an innovative culture. What are some do's and don'ts? What are some innovative ideas? And why is it important to formally reward and recognize innovative behavior? But you know, there is sort of the obligatory introduction that I would like to do with JM2 and with myself. So with that quick overview to the three-part series, let's continue here. First, thank you again to our friends at Q Markets who've partnered with me in the past and now again in my role with JM2. Q Markets continues to be a great thought partner, and I'm grateful to work with such good people who really are doing some truly innovative things in business today. So Steve, I appreciate your support and your friendship, and Happy New Year to you and your team at Q Markets. So by way of introduction, JM2 Capital, we're a small growing consulting firm and wealth management company here in Oklahoma City. We focus our services typically on small and mid-sized businesses who are looking for strategic advice and expertise as they go through transformative periods of growth or transition. Our clients are typically looking for our help during high growth periods, leadership transitions, large-scale strategic pivots or periods of creativity or innovation shifts due to industry trends, economics, maybe leadership succession, and other factors. Our help typically comes in different forms, but primarily through advisory services, interim executive and project leadership, culture assessments, business strategy, road mapping, and process execution. As consultants, our team's DNA is built from years of management consulting experience, being parts of entrepreneurial ventures, executive and operational leadership in multiple industries, even part of buy and sell transaction leadership and strategic investments. But perhaps even more importantly, just for context, and so you have a reason to maybe listen a little bit to us as business owners and profit and loss leaders in various industry positions, we've also earned a few stripes in the innovation space with different companies, learning how to become and to be more innovative ourselves. Our real life innovation experiences have come in service industries, in different industries like sports video market, in the product development and oil and gas industry, and in the early days of internet retail. As I'm sure many of you can appreciate, our learnings rarely came from just true unmitigated success, but rather they came through trial and error, through a lot of struggles and failures, and through frustrations and restarts. I'll be sure to provide specific examples of our innovation work over the course of this series. Lastly, we work with high net worth individuals and family offices in our wealth management practices and enjoy the challenges and rewards of being a strategic investor when opportunities present themselves. All right, enough of the commercial. So now that you have that, let's dig in and we'll get started here. So as you know, innovation is not a new concept. It's not a new trend. Nor is it the latest buzzword for the 21st century. The need for organizations to be innovative is not a recent phenomenon, as you know. However, I do think it's fair to say that more and more companies and their executive leaders are waking up to the value and business imperatives of a sustainable innovation mindset, perhaps more than ever before. There are innovation teams, chief innovation officers, innovation labs, and other manifestations of corporate innovation focus. And those certainly more common than ever before. And this is a good thing. I even noticed that some of you are part of innovation groups within your respective organizations as we looked at those who registered for this series. So you are part of a growing and positive trend. But I will say, with perfect 2020 hindsight, although my titles through the years never had the word innovation in them, I can look back at my career and see how many times I had a key part in or was responsible for innovation within my company. We just might not have called it that. And I'm guessing a number of you can say the same thing. You may say, how am I supposed to be innovative in my role? That may be something a lot of you have said in the past or even currently. So I'll give you a quick example of a role I had that either was or should have been considered an opportunity to be innovative. In this case, I wasn't creating new products, nor was there really an expectation of innovative thought, but having an innovative mindset made all the difference. As a young leader in a technology application support team with a large healthcare company, my job was to keep the back office systems running effectively for the business. But the first thing I noticed when I got the position was a tremendous lack of trust and collaboration with the business owners of those systems. My teams were considered necessary evils, sort of the old traditional business versus IT scenario. To make matters worse, each of my support teams resided in Dallas, while a number of our colleagues and business owners resided on the West Coast, which made relationship building and communication even more challenging. The first time I had the opportunity to meet with these leaders and present our support plan for the year, I shared our intention of starting this relationship in a humble and vulnerable way. Something needed to change. I wanted them to know I understood the reputation built by my predecessors. I shared my understanding of the mistakes made and the challenges we've imposed on simply communicating requirements with our team. I was honest and felt a bit exposed, but what happened was wonderful. The vulnerability and willingness to listen in new ways and communicate more openly and honestly allowed for a whole new level of collaboration. That first step of, forgive me, kind of quote unquote, innovative relationship building opened the door to a new era of communication for our teams. Maybe you think maybe that's a little bit of a stretch to call it innovation, but my point is that each of us can apply innovative principles in our daily jobs. So kind of to the slide here, whether you believe the topic of innovation is old or new news, as this slide depicts, there are all types of innovation, or there are a lot of ways people at least categorize innovation. We are bombarded with ever-changing and refined definitions of innovation. Certainly there are many types of innovation. Those of you on this call probably ascribe to one or others of these. And that's great. I'm not trying to change your mind about what innovation is or isn't to your organization. I'm not going to try to convince you that the secret sauce is, 4 types of innovation or 5 types or 10 types. And I'm not going to break out Webster's dictionary to give you the definition of innovation. But for the purposes of this call, let's all agree that most organizations frame innovation in ways that work for them. Each of you probably look at innovation in a subtly different way than your other colleagues here. You're at different stages of your innovation evolution. So no matter what you mean by innovation or how you categorize all the variations, what I will argue today is this. No matter what type of innovation is relevant to you and your company, I'll argue that to start your innovation journey in the best possible way, you must start with strategy and sponsorship. Not a strategy or just some level of sponsorship, but your corporate strategy and your organization's executive sponsorship. Whatever your organization's innovation objectives are, they must be aligned with your corporate strategy and business goals. Then it all flows from that. You can have the most creative and efficient idea generation technique ever used to generate innovative products or services, but if those ideas don't align with the strategy of your organization, they will live a short and frustrating existence because somewhere along the way, they'll lose their lifeline. If they aren't aligned, they run the risk of losing their sponsorship, their funding, their relevance, and ultimately their existence, especially as the market changes and demands of each year or quarter change priorities. But if they're effectively and purposely aligned with the corporate strategy and business objectives, then they will have the requisite executive sponsorship crucial to their sustained momentum. Someone at the right level will own them and guide them along the sometimes rocky path through the political minefields and changing preferences of those who might seem to have the authority to push them along, but alas, may not really have the clout to see it through. Innovation should start at the top and be driven down throughout the organization. The executive team should talk about your innovation goals. It shouldn't just exist inside a lab with limited spending authority. As an example, I literally consulted with a Fortune 40 company about 3 years ago that had gone through the common motions of setting up an innovation lab. They felt like they had to make a specific investment in innovation, but it was sort of created in a vacuum. It was led by a displaced manager who had only about $50,000 in spending authority. When they engaged us, they needed to build and prove a critical buy online, pick up in store process simply to stay competitive in their industry. But you can't imagine the time wasted and the glacial pace of change required to push something through there. It was because no one at the top owned it. Yes, it was loosely aligned with corporate strategy, but it failed to sustain because it failed to be owned at the executive level. You need both strategy and sponsorship. An example of our team where we experienced innovation and how innovation objectives were properly aligned with corporate strategy and had the requisite executive sponsorship was at Mathena, from which JM2 Capital was born. After about 15 years of business stability and conservative profitability, our CEO knew that in order to grow revenues and profits for this small family business, new product development was crucial. But the innovation needed to align with the strategy of becoming more digitally capable, delivering more green and sustainable products, and enter new markets with patented products that would increase the value of the company. Over the course of 9 years, Mathena introduced more than 10 new patented, sustainable digital products for their oil and gas customers that ultimately resulted in a tenfold increase in revenues and more than 50% profitability, all of which led to a successful sale of the business to a strategic buyer. Truly a remarkable success story of proper alignment with the business strategy and with the right level of sponsorship. The CEO championed these innovations from beginning to end. When challenges arose, he helped overcome them. He gave the right people the right authority to remove barriers. And during every quarterly review of the business, those innovation efforts were right at the top of the list of topics to understand status, review progress, identify funding needs, assess ROI, and celebrate success, or quickly pivot to learn from our mistakes. Now I'm going to go back on what I said earlier about not giving you a definition of innovation. Perhaps in its simplest form, in the world of business, innovation is survival. Just ask Kodak, Blockbuster, Xerox, JCPenney, BlackBerry. The graveyard of companies who failed to innovate is long and famously sad. And because it's so critical, innovation must be measured and considered as important as traditional performance metrics, namely sales and operational and financial metrics. If securing alignment with strategic business objectives and executive sponsorship provide the first step on your innovation journey, then having a meaningful overall framework will allow for a common reference point from which any organization can center itself along the way. A framework isn't a requirement, but certainly some find one to be a useful stake in the ground from which to make some solid progress. One of my favorites is this innovation framework I'm about to present from a dear friend at a really cool firm that has great thought leadership around innovation processes, strategy, and related reference models. I'm citing his team on this slide and felt like this representative framework is an effective way to look at the innovation journey. The first stage is the strategy stage, followed by a discovery stage, and finally a delivery stage. And as I said on the previous slide, start the journey with strategy. And if you'll notice on the slide, an image of a funnel in the background. Imagine, if you would, each of the aspects of the strategy area following through to where you ultimately have a list of prioritized and funded innovation projects, the top leading to the bottom. But to get to that point, it requires filtering through your overall innovation objectives. A focus on strategic areas where the business directs where and where not to invest in innovation, specific roadmaps that inform innovative designs across market, product, and technology investments, the allocation of strategic funding buckets driven from the top down, and disciplined portfolio management processes to provide clear visibility across the entire innovation value chain. With a healthy and disciplined strategy stage, the framework follows a discovery stage. This is where the real ideation and creativity comes in. During discovery, organizations conduct innovation challenges to source new ideas. Best practices here allow these challenges to be framed as competitions with meaningful rewards for individuals and teams. Formal processes exist for technology scouting and for engaging a well-established network of external subject matter experts and another source of ideas. Finally, a PPM process is used to ensure the portfolio is balanced and diversified. Business cases get developed and evolve through the life cycle of the project, and formal and recognized processes are used to select and prioritize ideas like shark tanks and benchmarking and innovation scorecards, things like that. And the third stage is the delivery stage, where the rubber meets the road and projects get executed according to the prioritized business strategy resulting from the strategy stage. So if there's one slide, or kind of the money slide, to remember for today's session, this is the slide. Here I've done my best to represent the primary keys to a successful start of an innovation journey. If each of these 5 keys can be effectively established at the start of your journey, your chances for success dramatically improve. For me, the 5 keys to success that should be included are strategy, leadership, culture, metrics, and capabilities. In strategy, as we've discussed, it all starts with alignment with the business strategy. a clearly articulated and aligned innovation vision that provides a clear picture of very intentional, measurable ROI, and must be part of that strategy. Executive leadership must be established up front and then own and champion progress and results throughout the journey. This allows for a strategic and non-political allocation of funds to support innovation progress, and a formal review process that consistently engages the executive team will ensure consistent momentum and alignment. A culture of innovation will be our next topic for next week when we get together again, but I'll highlight the importance of a corporate culture of innovation here. The best innovative cultures are driven from the top, not from a delegated mid-level idea vetter who simply wants to get a few ideas through the gauntlet to secure funding for next year. The best innovative cultures celebrate results, both the successes and the learning opportunities or failures. These results are shared, publicized, and become a source of refined learning for future innovation investments. There has to be a safe place for experimentation and failure. But I also believe that regardless of your role in the organization, an innovative culture can be owned by everyone. You can influence your company's culture of innovation. It's how you communicate. It's how you interact with each other. It's how you celebrate and acknowledge successes. Another key component to include up front is a desire and discipline to measure your innovation process. If innovation is truly aligned with corporate goals, then your innovation results should be viewed and measured with as much attention and rigor as your other corporate objectives and key metrics. And if you wonder whether you should measure something in particular regarding your innovation efforts, err on the side of inclusion. Measure it up front, during, after, and when you start again. Have the courage to measure it and then communicate it. This is no time for secrets or filters or the proverbial lipstick. Lastly, know your capabilities. Know what you have and know what's possible. Dedicate people, dedicate funds, dedicate reports. Treat these efforts like you do your most important initiatives, because if they're done right, that's exactly what they are and what they become. They are the lifeblood of your growth. And I'll share shamelessly at this point about capabilities. Take advantage of the innovation technology platforms that exist today. Our friends at Q Markets have built arguably the best platform available on the market today. As we wrap this session for today, let me make a couple last comments. When we talk about where you might be on your innovation journey, you may not be certain where you are on your timeline, or perhaps even harder to pinpoint, you may not know how ready you might be to either start from scratch or start again from where you're currently at on the journey. We have found with clients of different sizes that understanding where you are on the journey is not an easy task. Perhaps you're well on your way with strategic alignment with business goals, but you know you need improved executive sponsorship. Or maybe you had a successful year implementing some meaningful innovations, but you struggle to capture the real ROI and are lacking in measurements of continued progress. This makes it harder to secure ongoing or additional funding. Whatever your situation is, we'd love to talk to you about where you are, where you might prioritize your efforts to improve momentum, or even engage the executive team on a deeper level or effectively manage your projects. We help you get started through our innovation capability assessment. We survey your team across a number of capabilities, and there's just a few indicated here on the slide, to assess where your organization lies in relation to where you think you should be and where others in the industry might be. If you're interested in talking about this assessment, please feel free to email me after our session today. So now back to our map of kind of where we are. Thanks again for your time as we talked about starting the innovation journey today. As a reminder, our next session next Thursday will be about building a culture of innovation. In the meantime, if anyone would like to connect on today's topic, please feel free to reach out to me via email, which I'll share on the next slide. And Steve, thank you for providing this venue and opportunity to discuss the innovation journey. I'll return the microphone controls over to you and express my excitement again for next session next week, and I hope you all can make it.
Thanks, Jimmy. Yeah, and just a reminder, everyone, look forward to talking to you next week. And next week, we really dive into what I think is you saw recognitions and reward. You saw, right, everything around culture. That is really where a key battle is. And so look forward to talking to you then. And again, please bring your questions, your use cases, the challenges that you have. And if you want to share those beforehand, we certainly are happy to tailor that to address those. So again, talk to you all next week. Thank you.